So
Adios.
Happy Wednesday.
happy Wednesday. Adios. Adios, Sabrina. Hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Well, training's going so well, everyone's quit but two. But this follows. Well, we have Justin down there. Justin's not even in the class.
I think they still might be filtering out.
This is the 80-20 rule, guys. That's how it works. And
It's not 90-10, it's 80-20, John.
80-20 works almost every time. So if you have a company, of 10 people, then two people are getting 80% of the work done. If you have a company of 1,000 people, 200 people are doing 80% of the work. That's why it's so easy to cut expenses in big companies. People are just hanging around.
Yeah. We're seeing a lot of that right now, aren't we? On the IT side, the layoffs in the news.
Yeah, absolutely. On the other hand, there's so many startups and funded companies that they're dying for people too. So on the other hand, they're hiring like crazy. But the bigger companies, Twitter's the best example. He cut it from 7,500 people to 2,000, and the company's operating better, and it's still got too many people. Still too many. One of the rules of thumb in the software business is if you have a development team, let's say 20 people who are working on a project, and the project starts to get behind, do either one of you know what you should do?
If the project starts to get behind, I bring in my stakeholders again and get the update straight from their mouths in a meeting, and then figure out how I can get them back on track.
That's a good answer, Colton.
And make sure they understand their priority.
I'm not sure. You saw if the project's going not up to speed with 20 people, you said?
Yeah. They're behind.
Probably try to come in and look and see who's actually doing most of the work, and just let them finish it off so that the other people don't distract them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the common practice, is to come in and figure out who the worst half of the group is and fire them, get rid of them. And now you've got half the group left, and they're the good half. And so they're going to work without the distractions. Plus, what else might they be thinking?
I don't want to get fired.
I don't want to get fired.
Hell of a motivator, I'd say.
Yes. Well, okay. Well, since we got a small crowd, why don't we just be loose? Why don't you guys, let's start with some questions. Do you have any questions about the interviews yesterday or anything about what you're working on?
As far as the interviews, I know I just need to continue to put myself out there and keep going through them. Someone gave me some advice recently that said, start applying for companies that you just don't care to work for, and use them as practice. Get an interview with them and go in there.
Yeah.
Pretty cool, calm, and collected.
Yeah.
I haven't got any bites yet, though.
Well, it's great advice. It's great advice as long as you have the time to do it. Imagine how different you're going to feel, the 40th interview versus the 4th interview or the first interview. It's like night and day. It's like your job. I mean, how much more comfortable you got after a few years versus that first couple times out, so it's get some, they call it dirty reps. You know what a dirty rep is? It's
Just
it's
cleaning up the
just,
process as you go.
well, dirty rep kind of means a bad rep. Like if I was going to teach you how to play the bugle, our first 10 sessions would be bad. It would be bad, but you got to get those under your belt before you can start making a nice sound. You got to have the reps. So it's a good thing.
Build the skill and the confidence. Yeah.
Yeah, it develops both. Absolutely. They work together. When you finally hear it, when you play, you finally hear it, you like the way it sounds. That's when you got something, when you like it. Very good.
I actually got a question, John.
Okay.
Well, Jack's been, you both showed us the Intellisys tool and kind of what works for Jack and his company. And I may have already asked you this, so I apologize if I did, but, how do you pick up your prospective clients for your company? How do you get out there and go, there's my target, he's my neck?
Well, I've got two companies, and I'll walk you through both of them. So the software company is software for people who have big warehouses. And so they're processing, whatever it is, whether they're receiving Apple computers or whether they're receiving, grapes, or it could be anything. So most of my customers are near a port and they're receiving stuff off a ship and they store it and then they ship it out somewhere. So our software tracks it all the way through for them. And we found that our customers, they're spread out around the world, but they're clustered in the Southeast. That's where there's a lot of ports, and that's where we have a lot of clout. And so we put all of our marketing in the Southeast. We might get some leads from California, but we put our marketing in the Southeast. And what we do is we work with LinkedIn and we profile the exact kind of person we want. So we say we want it to be a warehouse in these southern states. We want it to be of this size. We want to target the owner or the warehouse manager. We want the company to be of this much revenue. So we have 7 or 8 different things that we target, and we tell that to LinkedIn, and we have a video that talks about our product. And so when those people, when they check their feed, we're paying LinkedIn to pop our little ad up in there for them to see it. So we're able to pay LinkedIn, so much money a month to expose those ads to just exactly the kind of people we want to talk to. And then they contact us, which is a huge advantage in the sales world, right? They're asking us for something. We're like, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll talk to you. What is it you want? So we're not really pushy. And that's how we get our business. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Do you continue to market in the same area where you have clients because you have plenty of referrals in that area?
Well, it's a funny thing. I think it applies pretty much to most businesses. You might be able to get business all over, but you generally cluster your business geographically near where you are. And, there's just reasons for that. Number one, it might be cultural. They might prefer to deal with someone from South Carolina versus somebody from Delhi or somebody from India, or someone from California, for Lord's sake, and so there's a cultural piece of it. There's also a comfort piece in that they're like, well, you're just up the road. If there's a problem, you can get down here. We can come see you. And so there's some of that also. So whatever the reason is, it just turns out that most of our customers historically have been in the Southeast. And that's why we put the money there. And, if we had unlimited marketing, we would advertise in the whole world. But, our company's not big enough to have a global footprint. Yeah. The other company is the Noob School company where we do the sales consulting. And, what I do there is pretty much just lots of social media. So I put out a podcast every week where we talk about sales. I put out a lot of shorts on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the spots are getting stuff. So almost every day of the week, there's 1 or 2 things coming out, some kind of video that we've done about sales. and that kind of pushes to establish me as someone who knows what I'm talking about. And then they contact me again. I like having an attractor model where they're coming to me saying, you know what, I could use some help with sales. Can you help me? And I'm like, well, we'll see. Let's have a little discovery session. Let's talk about it. And so anyway, that's what I do to get leads in both those business.
Gotta be
Hey, Jack.
comforting feeling when they're coming to you. That's when you probably know you're doing things right, I would think.
Well, yeah, it completely changes the game, Brandon. If you're not having to call people saying, hey, hey, Charlie, sorry to bother you, but I'm John Sterling, and I've got this company called Noob School, NOOB School, Noob School. We do training for so-and-so, and I don't know if it's right, it's you can hear it in my voice. I'm kind of pleading, begging, panicking, and I want it to be like, equal business stature, at least
Hey, what's up?
equal.
Hey. Hello?
Hey,
Hey, I'm running in the store to get dog food. Charlotte only wants to go in. Charlotte, stop!
Hot mic.
Can you say I'm with the kids?
so sorry.
What happened?
Hot mic.
That was my bad.
It's all good. Happens to
Wasn't
the
your
best
dad,
of
was
us.
it? Wasn't your dad, was it, Jack?
No, you're good. That was not you.
Okay. So they just asked me where I got my lead, how I develop leads, Jack. And I was just walking them through that.
Yeah, it's a game changer when people are coming to you versus you going out to the, to the cold prospecting, fields. It's you're working with people that want to work with you versus people that are having to be convinced. So changes the game. I mean, I thought for years when I started that I would be just calling strangers on the phone and saying, hey, you never met me before, but you have 30 seconds to hear my pitch. And that really didn't work that well. I mean, it's kind of like you get that one time when you kind of like get somebody to stay on the phone and talk to you and maybe go somewhere. You set another meeting. It's just like, it's like a one-off. It's random.
Yeah.
I called the head of IT for Waffle House one time, and a bunch of dad's developers were sitting in the bullpen right next to me. And I had the guy on the phone for like 20 minutes, and he was pretty adamant that they didn't need anything that we had. But I was like, are you sure? Like, you really do like your relationship with AT&T? That can't be true. That can't be right. And like, got off the phone. The guy basically just knowed me to death. Nothing, don't need anything. And the developer's like, man, you really gave that guy what for? Like, that was kind of a beating. Like, you kind of just browbeat him. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Like they were saying like it was a good thing. And I was like, I guess I kind of did. Like, I was not, I was taking the Tommy Boy school of sales, don't take no shit from no one or whatever. So it really is, it's a game changer. If you can set up those lead magnets, things that you're putting out there, whether it's social media posts or, one pagers, or go to networking events or whatever, hand out, cards or whatever you want to do, ways to tell people what you do, not try and sell them, and get them to send business your way when it's either them or someone they know that needs what you have. That is
I'll give you an example. I'm going to make part of this up, but let's just say Colton started a podcast. Are you in Birmingham, Colton?
I will be in a month.
Okay. So he started a podcast in Birmingham, and he was interviewing people that had been in the Army and been in the IT world, and they transitioned out into civilian IT. And we have to think of a good, clever name for it. It could be like, Army IT trends or something, I don't know
Boots
what
to
it
Bits.
is, but Boots to Bits. Yeah, Boots to Bits is a great name. And you could do it for almost free, Colton. You could do it on your computer to computer just for free. And I do mine in the studio. It costs a little bit of money, but you can do it for free essentially. And just find these people on LinkedIn or whatever service you guys use and say, I just want to talk to you about your transition so we can help other people. Right now, once you have that going, you can start to forward it to all the IT managers in Birmingham. You know, I'm supporting Butch to Bits, whatever, transition. God bless you. Thank you for your service, people. You just send it to all of them and see if they want to follow it, see what's going on. And you could, you know, you could obviously cut that up yourself and make a few shorts out of it, put it on, you know, social media, Boots to Bits. Here's the transition from the Army. Now, so many good things happen because of that. So many good things. Can you name one, Colton?
Exposure.
Yes, that's one. Brandon, you're next. Can you name two? Can you name one more?
I definitely like the exposure. Just help build your network. The bigger it is, the the bigger it gets, right? Just kind of like on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. That's why we're pushed to get to the 500.
Yeah, Jacko?
It's gonna build credibility.
Yes.
People look and see you got this body of work. You know, you're doing something. It's not just, hey, I'm trying to sell you something. It's like, hey, here's the conversation that we're having. You know, you can participate if you want.
Yeah.
I do something weekly. I have a morning security call. It's an open call. It's on Clubhouse. It's with anybody in the world who wants to join and talk about whatever our subject is for the day, but it's called the Cybersecurity and Coffee Clubhouse group. And we meet and talk about whatever's happening in the world of cybersecurity, right? It could be a particular breach we're talking about. It could be a new technology, a new tactic, new, you know, how do you start a career in cyber? It's really wide ranging. And I've never gotten any business out of it. I connected with multiple vendors who are out there trolling and met with, you know, learned about their product, but I've never actually met a prospect through that. But what I'd use it for is I take notes on the conversation. I mostly just ask questions and try and guide the conversation along, and take notes on what we learned and what the kind of takeaways were. And then I'd use that for social media content. And you know, take that conversation and say, oh, here's, you know, 5 or 6 digestible bites from that hour-long call that I make posts about on LinkedIn. So I say, hey, this is the day we talked about, you know, breaking into the cybersecurity industry and trying to overcome the, you know, the talent gap. And you know, what does that look like, right? What are some of the, what's stopping people from getting into cyber, and, you know, what's stopping companies from being able to find the talent that they need and stuff like that. So it gives me, you know, something to post about on LinkedIn instead of having to come up with something from scratch every day. And it's credibility, right? It's putting me in a position where I'm leading this group call from, you know, for people all over the world in cybersecurity, lay people and professionals alike. And it's a way to build credibility, right? To say, hey, this is something that I'm, you know, I can speak intelligently about, and that transfers to be able to help your company do something about it, not just, you know, talk about it. So
Also, this is from my perspective, it will make you more confident, right? You will grow through this experience, as I have doing a podcast and as Jack has. We've both gotten much more confident, like on camera and on screen. And another thing is you're helping others. When you're helping your brothers, you're helping them get some exposure themselves. They can take this podcast and send it to their whole network, right? So you're helping them. And then, you know, lastly, obviously, you know, this is the best way for you to get a job in Birmingham. The best way. And, you know, you might get a job tomorrow and still want to do it, you know, to be kind of the person who's the bits to bytes guy in Birmingham, and you become helping the people that are coming there and everything. But if you don't have a job immediately, you know, you could say, well, I just decided to do this to try to help other people like me that are looking for something. And, you know, you'll start having conversations with these IT directors to say, well, sure, I'm looking for a great company to go sell for, but in the meantime, I'm doing this podcast trying to help people, you know. And so anyway, it's just an idea for something out of the box you can do that will attract people to you instead of you having to go beg them for something. And I don't, what would your podcast be called, Brandon? Blow this up? Don't blow this up?
See, now that's if I try to get the credibility built up on past, which all those irons in the fire is still kind of driving me crazy. And I'm trying to hyper
could say,
focus in on the
you could say
IT
don't-
and the sales side.
because they don't. I don't know. I will think of something. Think of something. I don't know what it is, but
The Skipping Landmines podcast. Help your organization avoid the technology landmines out
we
there.
call it Claymore.
Claymore. This is the
Point
fun
at
part. It's
enemy, right?
branding ideation is always fun.
Listen, I'll tell you, branding. I will tell you guys, one time. You cannot believe how important a name is. The name is so important. I'm in Argentina. I'm looking for a saxophone shop to go and look at saxophones, get lessons, maybe buy a saxophone. Who knows? There's about at least 20 of them in this town. This town is like the size of New York City. It's so big. So which one did I decide to go to? The one that's not the one that's called like Buenos Aires Saxophone. It's called, the one I went to is called Sax Soul. Sax Soul.
Alliteration goes a long way.
Oh, Sax Soul. I feel you. I feel you, Evita Peron. So, and it was great. I mean, within 5 minutes, me and the guy are dancing around the store playing the saxophone. He's a crazy man, Jack. Can you
You
believe
found
I
your
found
people.
a crazy person? Yeah,
I
found
had
him.
no doubts that you would find your people in Buenos Aires. Only a matter of time.
Oh, it
So
doesn't take
I
long.
don't think it looks like Steven is not on today, but he asked yesterday about discovery, maybe an area that we haven't talked a lot about. So if no one else has any questions about, how to kind of build a network or how to generate interest in people coming to you versus you going to them, I got some stuff I want to show you guys, but I don't want to cut short a conversation that was already in progress. So you guys tell me if you got more stuff on that front. Let's
I
do
hogged
it.
the floor a little bit. Jack, Colton, do you have anything?
Justin, Tara, you guys are off camera and I guess out of sight, out of mind, but do you guys have anything to ask or can we move on to something else? I just wanted to show you guys something that I've been trying to find. I knew it was on the Intellisys website and I just hadn't been able to find it, but I found it. It's these vertical mapping sheets that take, an industry like manufacturing or retail, and then, talk about what they might be experiencing that you're looking for, and then map that to questions you can ask and kind of discover more about that and generate a conversation about how you could help. So I'm going to share real fast and show you guys what I've got to show you. So you guys see this screen? Intellisys stuff. All right. So these are success stories. That's great. But then this vertical hot sheet. So waste management, trucking, software development, regional banking, outsourced call center, mortgage broker, manufacturing, IT, hotel and lodging, government, gambling operations, energy and power, distributed retail, distributed medical, architect and engineering firms, a guide to using the vertical hot sheet, and then airlines. So those are all the ones that they've got. I want to, unless someone want to see a particular one of these, or just I was going to go to manufacturing first.
That'll work.
Manufacturing, it is. So this is what this looks like for all of these. So you've got pain points and outcomes, right? So pain point might be they're spending a bunch of money on research and development, right? Cost a lot of time and capital expenditure to to improve IT efficiency. Yeah, they're spending a lot of money basically, and then you could follow that down here. Your R&D investment is one of your most valuable assets. Confidential R&D work may be vulnerable to rogue employees, failed hardware, and security breaches. Have you experienced that kind of loss before, and how costly is that to your business? I mean, that's taking something they might be experiencing and giving you a question that you can kind of frame it and ask them, about their business. And then flip side, this is like a condensed version of 10 questions you can ask in a linear fashion if you're talking to somebody. How are your locations managed today? Do you have a centralized management, or is it location, decentralized out to the locations, right? you have anybody outside of the country, right? Do you have a decentralized decision-making IT team, or is it kind of all over the place, right? And then this is all meant to kind of drive the conversation with someone who's in manufacturing.
Since you brought that up, Jack, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Is Intelisys global, or or is it, mostly national vendors?
it's both global vendors and regional vendors. There are companies that are only in the US. There's companies that are all over the world. Like, I don't know if we still can, but we could sell like China Telecom if you wanted to. Telstra, it's an Australian vendor. Like, we've got these different vendors that are from all over the world. Most are headquartered here, somewhere outside the US, but yeah, short answer is that there's a whole crap ton of vendors for all different shapes and sizes. So each one of these different things, you've got, cost and competition, innovation, logistics, internet communication, B2B, globalizing your manufacturing, and then the reframe about how to actually have, start a conversation on these things. So do I have any questions or, thoughts about that? You want to see a different industry? I can also give you these guys as PDFs to take and use whatever, however you want.
Have you ever used one of these personally?
Yeah, so like I use this for, basically if I'm going to meet with somebody in a manufacturing space, something like this, I could take some of these questions and cherry pick them. And this helps me kind of have an intelligent conversation with that manufacturing leader, right? Are your computers in the building, or are they, someone else's data center, right? Are you in the cloud? Are you premise based? Questions like that are pretty much, I don't even have to come to this anymore to ask necessarily. That's just kind of a default question. How do you run your security program today? Like, this is not solution oriented. This is open ended and problem oriented. So it's saying, we're not even talking about potential fixes yet. We're just trying to figure out what's going on and maybe help the customer even figure out how to make sense of all the different inputs they're getting on a day-to-day basis. So, if you're a manufacturing plant manager, for example, all of these things are going to be somewhat relative. You might not think they're all pain points, but that's why you ask, right? You ask the questions, see what they say. And this is where, all of this feeds into that pain funnel. So you could have these conversations. You could say something like, how comfortable are you leveraging cloud technology versus on-premise systems? They could say, we tried going into the cloud, it didn't go so well, so we're mostly an on-premise company. And you're like, hey, tell me more about that. Like, that's what I'm listening for. I'm listening for someone to say something that isn't rosy, right? If they say we're very comfortable, we're 100% in the cloud today, that's fantastic. I love that. Awesome. Do you have written security policy and regular security audits? Yeah, we have some documented stuff, and we should be doing regular audits by rule, but haven't really gotten around to it this year. Okay, tell me more about that, right? I mean, that's kind of a pain point, right? Something you should do, but you haven't. That's what we're listening for. So not all these questions are some, you can pick and choose the ones you want. It's not like you have to use them all exactly the way they're written, but yeah, so it's not something, Colton, that I'm going to use like daily. I'm not going to have this in front of me as I'm talking to someone, but I will come into this before a call, read some of the questions and reframes that might be relevant for that conversation, and then let the notes that I take before a call, I'll have this in the discovery portion. So it's in front of me. Good question. So if there's multiple pain points, how do you know which one to run with? So this is, again, you're going to ask the customer. Okay, say, hey, we've talked about a couple of things today. You brought up a couple different things as problematic for your organization. Which one do you think is the most relevant right now? It could be like, hey, this is really important, but it's not urgent right now. The thing that's urgent is this. Okay, now I know what the customer cares about, because if someone presents kind of three pains to me and I don't really ask them for like, hey, which one of these do you care about most right now? I'm going to drive what I want to do, which is probably the most profitable of the three for me. And that's, maybe lined up with what they want. maybe not. So that's why we're always coaching you guys to ask about what they care about, right? So he's like, hey, you said these 3 things are problems. You know, I've asked for permission to offer solutions, but before I do, I want to make sure I know, you know, you can say something like, in my experience, or, you know, normally if we try and go after 2 different things at once, we won't get anything done. So is it okay if we pick one of these things to work on, and whichever one it is, can it be the one that you are most interested in solving, right? So does that make sense, Colton?
I'm gonna add Jack to that.
Yep.
Great question, Colton. Great question. Jack gave a great answer. Prospects are so funny. They might just be saying number 2 and number 3 and number 4 just to keep their lips moving. You know, they might just be saying, yeah, this and that, and this and that, this and that. And Jack wants you to find out what's really problem. Let's focus on that first, then we can circle back to the other stuff, and you'll never have to worry about the other stuff. So it's your job to figure out what the real problem is. Let's fix that first, then the rest.
So here's another one. If you're talking to someone who's in distributed retail, which just means, you know, branches, right? Could be a gas station, could be a store, anywhere that's got a, you know, bunch of locations. If they process credit cards, PCI compliance, that is a big lift on their end. So got to do PCI compliance every year. You know, so this is kind of telling you what the pain might be, right? So non-compliance to PCI standards, you get shut down and you can't process payment anymore. You can't accept credit cards. So if you're a retail company, you can't take credit card, you're dead. There's no cash or check only, you know, option these days. You've got to be able to take card payment. So, and then there's fines for non-compliance, right? You know, so there's bad just on the top of here, right? PCI compliance, reframe comes down to, you know, mandatory for businesses of all sizes. What kind of impact would it have in your business if your bank passed on the non-compliance fees, increased your transaction fees, or shut down your credit card transaction ability? What would that do to your company? Get them to think about it. If it's never happened before, they're gonna say that'd be catastrophic. If it has happened before, you want to know about that and say, well, tell me more about that happened, when that happened last time. Sounds like it's happened before. What did that look like, and how did you guys respond? Like, you know, they're telling you, hey, this is a real pain, this has happened before. Well, what'd you do about it? Oh, we hired a PCI compliance as a service firm, and they do it all for us now. That's not a problem. Okay, great. Next question. You know, lack of Wi-Fi for customers. You know, many retail organizations find Wi-Fi access encourages customers to shop longer and spend more money. Companies are also leveraging an immense amount of analytics and customer data in real time. How are you addressing these opportunities in your business? You're just moving down the list, trying to figure out what's there. And if they say, you know, we have a rock solid internet connection, we got redundant circuits, and, you know, our customers, we have, you know, a detailed data analytics program built around you know, customer behavior in store and online. Like, that's phenomenal, man. I wish I could put you guys on a billboard and advertise to my other prospects and clients. You guys are doing great. You know, point of sale, right? Where everybody interacts with your company to buy stuff. A lot of security breaches have happened that way. You know, how do you guys, let's see, recent security breaches have caused companies like Target more. So you can kind of see how this thing maps and how you would use this to, you know, drive a conversation with a prospect. And then here's just kind of a condensed version of those 10 questions, right? How do you handle PCI? How do you provide wireless access? When was your last PCI audit? Or the results? You know, this is what matters to retail companies. So you're asking relevant questions that are not generic, specific to their industry. And so it shows that you know what you're talking about a little bit, if you know what to ask. Also, you know, everyone's somewhat self-centered and egocentric. So if you're asking them questions about their industry and their business, they're more likely to give you kind of feedback. And again, the point here is not to demonstrate competency first and foremost, is to figure out what they care about, and if they've got something that's so painful that they need to do something about that, and if that lines up with what you can deliver, right? If they say, hey, I've got this pain, you know, we just can't hire enough talent to stay on board. People keep leaving us and ghosting us and killing us. I hear this all the time, but I don't have any, completely non-overlapping with what I deliver as a service. So like, hey, I might know some staffing companies. I know some job seeking veterans I could help you with, but like, That's not my lane, right? So do they have a pain? Is it real and valid? Can you help them with it? That's ultimately what these are trying to drive towards. So you guys want to see another industry?
I wouldn't mind checking
questions
out
about-
IT, but can I ask you both of you a question while we're doing this?
Yeah.
I just thought of maybe a potential sales angle and just curious your thoughts.
Yeah.
Mom and pop type, small business. You know, not necessarily in this section, but where you actually go to the map, Jack, that you use to find out, hey, what internet services do they have in their area? Will that also let you know other parts of IT or maybe the everything about it, whether or not they're dealing with international? And just kind of thinking of the angle that if they have any pains, maybe pushing them back to, you know, the US, something that they trust, maybe potential angle. I don't know.
I'm not entirely sure that I'm following Brandon.
And it's more like, I'm more looking at it from like a cold call. So that other
Mhm.
portion that you showed us quite a while back where you go to the map and then you can find out what their internet services are.
Yeah, so I could come to like, go back. Just get to
Will that tell you
intelligence.
more than just internet services? Will that let you know that they're using cloud services from China or something like that?
No, not so for a company specific thing. No,
Yeah.
you're not, you can look up the address, but it doesn't, it's not a specific company listing. So like when you look up the address, it just tells you what facilities are available there. It doesn't necessarily tell you who
Okay.
is paying for them. It might have who originally purchased the circuit, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's who's still there. Like I've seen cases where it lists a company in a building and that company moved out 2 years ago. They have a new tenant. So
Okay.
let's see. We're
That
looking at Compass.
definitely, yeah, that definitely answers my
So
question.
it's more than just the internet piece though. So let's say you might have a company they want to look up. You want to use as an example?
Small, not right off the top of my head. Maybe you can use somebody in Greenville.
Okay, somebody in Greenville. Let's say chart span. Chart span. Here's the address. Okay, so now we got this downtown Greenville. Chart spans location, and then here's the list of stuff we can look at. So show me the nearest data center for chart span. No data available. That's weird. Okay, take that off. Lit buildings that are lit for fiber already, right? This shows the nearest neighbors. There you go. So this shows you kind of just some downtown Greenville, which buildings are already lit for fiber. So if you're talking to somebody that's in this building, this is the same building, right? So 4011 University Ridge, Greenville, 415 University Ridge, Greenville. It's got Spectrum Business. See, get a quote, get a street view look, see what it looks like from the street, so we can know what the building looks like to walk up. Basically just Google Maps, just overlaid with some stuff. But yeah, so next. So this is the next headquarters. ChartSpan, I believe, started it here. So this might not be their current address, but this building is lit with Spectrum Business Internet, right? So it's also got other available services, right? Segra, Lumen, AT&T are available. Spectrum Business is the local carrier. That's like the default. And then others down the list. So these are all the nearby lit buildings to that one. So there's lit buildings, there's wireless networks. This one's a little bit squishier. I don't think it's like as useful because it just shows a heat map. So where if you get a Wi-Fi or a wireless signal, dead zone, looks something like that.
Cool.
So
So
It's-
those other vendors, Jack, like AT&T and stuff like that, if you found in your pay model that they're unhappy with Spectrum, that would help you get an idea of the services available that you could pitch.
Correct. So the one I use most is this Metro Fiber right here, because power plants, green buildings, that stuff like is less relevant, right? I've done some stuff with this natural hazards down here where you can, you know, for commercial real estate partners. So for a commercial real estate broker, flood zone, earthquake, they have access to all this stuff, but you can put it all on a report and add internet facilities to it. And then they have a kind of a one source for like information about that. That location. So say you've got an empty commercial space and you're trying to get somebody to either buy it or lease it, being able to have a referable document that says, hey, here's the, you know, nearest data center is, you know, 200 yards away. You've got high-speed internet already in the building. You know, they can kind of talk about that. And most commercial real estate folks that I've talked to don't do that already. So that's kind of my value add to them. Is like, listen, you send me an address and I'll send you back a report with the relevant details you're asking for. And you can use that to close deals better. I just ask that you help, you know, ask for, if the customer is going to buy internet, we ask that you ask them to do it through us. That's my only kind of like, you know, quid pro quo. So this is the Metro Fiber map. So you can see color coded, you know, who is near this building. So, right. So you got, they're all fiber providers. You can see where the lines actually run, which is cool. It's downtown. And so say I wanted to say, quote this person fiber, right? I'm gonna get a quote. Just start filling out customer information. You know, it's not gonna let me proceed without giving that information. So I'll just skip that. But, you know, what are they actually looking for? You know, quote details, you know, who the point of contact is and all that stuff. And it's gonna, you know, you can come to my quote history here. And I think
And this just
I
sends
think
it to them in the blind, right? This just sends them like an email, something like
no.
that.
So yeah, you can have it send an email like when I create it. So that this is the most recent one I did, Zero Gravity Projects. This came from one of our referral partners down in Columbia. They do a lot of video work, right? So they're doing a lot of production of videos and video files, and their basic internet is really struggling. And so already Spectrum business internet customers, we quoted Spectrum Fiber, which is actually a totally different business. Spectrum Business and Spectrum Enterprise are two distinctly different companies. So like, they don't talk to each other. It's very strange. The only unifying piece of Spectrum is their like CEO. He oversees both companies, but they're like separate entities. So we can sell Spectrum Fiber to a Spectrum business customer, give them fiber over coax, and that's a win. But you know, when I send the order, I can either just generate it for myself and then send it to whoever I want, or I can just say, Brandon, if you were the prospect, I could put your email in there and send you the quote directly, and that way you can see it, you know, sign it, return it, and get things going from there. So that's but you can see, you know, location, term, that's kind of a quote number, and then what is it, fiber monthly billings. So for a 3-year term, $6.99 a month for 3 years. That'd be fine. That'd be fine with me. So but yeah, you can kind of see, you know, historically, you know, who we quoted, what the product or service was, what the monthly recurring cost would be, who the prospect the company would be. So that's all from here, right? So you start here, do the discovery. You could do like that. Anyway, this is the tool I use often, but it doesn't do much beyond this, because this is kind of the meat and potatoes of Intelisys services, you know, connectivity. So it's somewhat limited in that fashion. You can see, you know, go back and see historical searches and stuff like that. But
But
would be
Intelisys doesn't
nice.
have a tool to let me know what cloud provider that company's using.
no, that's private information, right? The company's not going to want that public. You know, their stack of vendors that they use is not everyone thinks this way. Not everyone thinks about it as a security vulnerability to publicize your vendors, but I think they default kind of just, to not talking about it. So definitely wouldn't want to broadcast that on something like this, even for agents only, right? I mean, it's that would be kind of invasive, right? Because this isn't this is like where the company has their facilities. So kind of there's you have WAN, wide area network, and LAN, local network. And so you're kind of talking about not WAN or LAN, like cloud services stuff that they use. That's like vendor relationships and stuff. And this gives you a taste of that, right? You can maybe think that like, okay, this building, if it's occupied by this company so exclusively, and they've got this, it's the only service that's available at that building, you can make the deduction that that company pays that vendor for services. But it's not really giving you that information explicitly. It's not saying, hey, ChartSpan uses Segra or the chart, you know what I'm saying? So that's one of the things that you want to learn about when you're talking to a company. You want to figure out, who do you use today, right? What does your inventory of technology services look like? Do you have do you have premise-based servers that are running all this software? Do you have cloud-based servers that are hosting it somewhere else? That's part of the discovery for any company, is trying to figure out what their structure looks like, right? What is the operational technology that you need to run your business, right? Is it just email, and notepads, or do you have something more robust than that? Do you have a Salesforce? Do you have some sort of development environment where people produce stuff or software, or do you have databases, customer database, Active Directory, file server? There's all these different pieces and components of the business, and you kind of want to figure out, like, again, this is broadly talking about IT and cloud stuff. It's not like if you're focused, like if you're working for a vendor, your conversation is going to be a lot more narrow than we're talking right now. Does that make sense?
It does. It really does. One of the things that got me spun down this hole on just the local dealing with local or trying to stay national is when I was talking to that VP of sales there at the Texas Rangers, we started talking CRM. I talked about our experiences and kind of made it my own. Again, trying to be on his level, right? And then he let me know that, we use Salesforce. So if you came to work here, that's what you need to use. And why do they use it? Because it's in Dallas. And he talked pretty detailed on how, if they got an issue, they're right down the road. A rep will be there in minutes, and absolutely see the positives in that. Maybe the sales angle. That's just where my head was going.
No, and that's 100% right. There was a guy that Dad knows well, one of his top salespeople back in the day, and he and his wife are opening up a dental practice out in Portland, Oregon, which is where my wife's from. So we were out there visiting. We met, went for a hike. They bought like 3 units of a strip mall, and they're clearing all the walls out and making it one big, dental office. And it's like, listen, this is right in our wheelhouse. I'm happy to quote stuff. And like, I was quoting these national vendors that didn't necessarily have like a presence locally. They had people that could contract out, but like it came down to, he's like, we're going to go with a local company, even though they're you're comparable. You're not like more expensive or anything. We like you, but you don't live here. And this local vendor, we met him through the Chamber of Commerce, and he's really connected. And like, we're trying to drive business to this dental practice. And so we think that by using a local vendor, that'll get us in with this local crowd, right? We don't know any of these people here. We want to network with the Chamber of Commerce, and that's how we met this vendor. The vendor's very networked in the Chamber of Commerce, so we want all these Chamber of Commerce people to come to our dental office and get their teeth cleaned or whatever. So the motivations to select a vendor are way beyond like in your personality a lot of times, right? It's not just like, that's why we ask what they care about, right? Hey, if we come back and we're exactly the same price or maybe a little cheaper than the other vendors you're looking at, what are the chances you're going to go with us? They might say like, if you're better price, that's all we care about, we'll go with you. Okay, great. They might say, even if you were cheaper, we're not going to go with you because we are invested in the other vendor, right? We're stakeholders in their company. Someone told me that recently. It's like, oh, that's great to know, right? I don't have any any illusions about what's going to happen. You're not going to buy from us because you've got a financial stake in our competitor. So, figuring out what they care about, kind of the psychology behind why they would buy someone versus someone else, it's all great. But yeah, to get back to your original question, there's nothing proprietary in here, right? You can't go to a company and like, okay, at this address, they're using Salesforce and Microsoft Outlook and, HubSpot, something like that. I mean, you wouldn't get that type of detail from this source. You could get it, you could start a conversation here. But this is just kind of mostly just, I've only found it useful for internet. I haven't found it useful for really anything else.
No.
Now there's Cable Finder, which is actually probably a more efficient way to do what we were just talking about, figure out what internet services are available somewhere. And this is the newer, Compass is nice kind of at a glance. You can produce a report, get a map and all that stuff. But if you want to find the actual details and get a quote for an address, I've showed you guys this before, but this is a different way. This is what I normally do. So you can see for fiber, it's there, right? Ready to install, no construction required, 90 to 120 days. And then light to moderate construction for coax, which is strange, probably 30 to 90 days. And then it said, okay, customer is asking for fiber. We're gonna go fiber only versus fiber and voice. And then you can start kind of building out quote. So default to 3 years, toggle fiber. Let's say I'm gonna quote 50 meg fiber. And then do they want this? Do they want that? Do they need Wi-Fi? Do they need backup? Or, if fiber goes down, are they okay having a couple, up to an hour of downtime or not? DDoS protection, right? Managed router, static IP address. If they're hosting something locally, they need a static IP. So all of those are check boxes, right? You can see what it adds to the, managed network edge adds 219 a month to the bottom line. And that's that opens up a big can of worms. What the fuck is that? I don't even know. So, but yeah, you can see how that works, and then we can generate a contract, have it sent to the customer. So, XYZ Corporation, and then I can send quote via email, and that's where I'd put, Brandon's email in there, and hit OK. And that way, I can add multiple people, recipients, stakeholders, myself, to get that quote sent out. Everyone can see it and then say, hey, just let me know and I'll send you a quote. So this is what I've done for the last 5 years, right? Selling circuits. It's only in the last year or so that we really got into the cybersecurity game. So this is cut and dry what people told us to do when we got started. It was just sell circuits until you figure out what you're good at. That's selling circuits, right? You're looking what's there, what are your options? And then so think about what it takes to do that without that tool, right? Without Intelisys providing all that dashboard. So you're looking to move to a new location, right? Got the address. How do you go about figuring out who's available, right? You call it Spectrum, right? They're the big carrier in town. Hey, we're moving into this address, and they're going to say, hell yeah, we can do that, right? We're just going to get you a quote. They want you to say yes, and then once you've signed up, it's like then you'll find out if there's problems, right? Then you'll find out if they actually have service at that address, or if they're just blowing smoke, and they're going to, oh, actually it's going to be 10 grand to build it out, and it's going to take 2 months or 3 months, right? Versus actually, no shit, this is really there. The previous tenant had this, we know it's active. And then you only have one data point, right? You've called Spectrum and you got Spectrum's answer. Now you got to go call AT&T, and they're going to say, oh, we don't have anything there. Okay, cool. And then you're going to go call is there a third one? Is there a fourth one? How much digging do you do before you just pick somebody and say yes? So that's the kind of like direct way. And that's what we're displacing most of the time, is saying, hey, if you don't want to do all that stuff, if you don't want to do the hassle of calling around and getting quotes and comparing quotes and stuff, we do all that for you, right? We got this great tool. Give me your address and just, what do you use the internet for, basically? Are you comfortable with some level of downtime every now and then? Or do you need like high availability, high uptime, all the time. You know, get a sense of what they need and then come back and say, hey, based on what you told me, this is the vendor you should try. This is how long it's going to take. This is how much it's going to cost. You know, a couple more fine-tuned questions. You know, do you need a managed router? Are you going to manage the router? You know, what are we handing off to, right? So we bring the internet to the building, but then where does it go from there? Do you have a, you know, do you have switching and networking stuff inside the building covered? Because we can do that as a service too. So that's selling circuits. Telesis makes it easy. And so I probably get 2 or 3 a week on a slow week. People just saying, hey, I've got a prospect or I got a client who's looking at upgrading internet or moving locations and need internet or whatever. And here's the address. And I usually ask some clarifying questions like, what's the company name? What do they have today? What's the catalyst for this conversation? Is it a move? Is it they're unhappy with their current vendor? Is it they just need better service? You know, what is it that's brought them to the table today so I can understand it better? And then, you know, lastly, it's like, if I send you a quote and you take it to the customer, my only fear, my biggest fear in this kind of, you know, this circuit business is that I'm going to do the legwork to produce a quote, you know, some information, and then the customer just takes it and goes and calls the vendor directly, places an order. I don't get anything for that, right? I've got to be the one to send the quote or send the contract over for signature. And then I take that signed contract, give it to Intelisys, and they file it for commissioning. So I can do all the work, do everything right, and still not get paid if they don't know what to do when it's time to actually sign up, right? So anybody have any questions about that?
It's kind of shame on you and between the pain decision and budget portions if you don't find out what their priorities are, whether it's the cheapest bang for my buck or the highest availability, right?
Yep. And you know what's interesting is most of these times that I'm getting these requests, it's like we're skipping that entire conversation, right? They're going already to fulfillment and saying we need internet here by this date. It's like, okay, cool, that's great, but I can't just not just like a one size fits all thing where you just say, yeah, turn the internet on. It's, you know, I end up having to back people up a little bit and say, okay, you know, tell me about what's going on. Who do you have today? How long have you had them? You know, take them through the pain funnel and then say, okay, now that you've said, obviously I'm okay with outside ideas because that's why we're talking. Okay, now that we've done that, I have a much better understanding of what you need and when you need it and how much you can afford to spend. And, you know, for a long time, I was just default, yep, here's fiber, here's your fiber quote. And people were like, oh, we can't afford this. You know, $500 a month, that's absurd. We're paying 75 today. Well, how unhappy are you with that $75 connection?
Yeah.
Very, but they're unwilling to spend or can't spend, right? A little church or something like that. They don't have the money for this stuff a lot of times. So, you know, our job is not to just be the order caddy. It's to really figure out what they need, help them figure out what they need, and then, you know, deliver that versus like, just here you go. Here's the information you asked for.
Now, Jack, to protect yourself with the indirect sale, once you send them a quote, can you register the deal, or do you have to wait till a sale is already in process to stop them from cutting you out?
So it's interesting. I've never really registered deals for circuits because they're so low level, and the circuit, you know, the AT&Ts and the Spectrums of the world. There's not really a process for that. So it's like once I create the order, it's like it logs in their system and it's kind of that automatically registers it for me. But like I don't have to say I want to register the deal. If I'm doing a different, like if it's a cloud services deal, if it's a security, something like that, a more complex sale. I mean, fiber or internet service is pretty straightforward. You know, where are you? What are your approximate needs? Are you okay with this 3-year term? We want something different. And then yes or no, right? So there's not like a long sales cycle for that. For most of the other stuff, it's more complicated. So that might be 60 days from the time you start talking to the time you actually send them a proposal. So that's why there's a more formal kind of deal reg process for those other services. I think it's just more baked into the process. Like they can't, you know, if I create an order, or I create a quote or a contract and send it to a customer and they're sit on it for a week, that I'm defended from a direct rep from that company reaching out to that customer and selling them the same thing, because I did it through Intellisys, and that shows up as like, okay, CloudHound this is a prospect of theirs. The same company can't get in there and sell it. Now another vendor could, right? If I'm quoting AT&T and then Spectrum comes in and sells some fiber, I can't do anything about that, right? That's a competitor, but it's only the same vendor that I'm defended from by doing that. So that's a good question. To close out, do you guys want any of those mapping sheets? I can share them today, or we can share them later. But did you guys want any of those?
I'd love the IT, but I think you already gave me access, right? So I could go ahead. And
Oh yeah,
share.
that's right. So you got access. So are you all good there?
I have not used it yet. I've been sec plussing like crazy, but by the end of this weekend, somewhere in there, I'm deep down.
Check it out. Let me know. And I'm glad you're playing around with it.
Thanks,
Cool.
gents. Really appreciate today.
You got it. Anything else?
Thank you.
Everybody good?
All good.
All right. Talk to you guys tomorrow.